In this edition of The Lead, senior health ministry officials face the music for allegedly siphoning off around R1 million from the Global Fund, which is actually meant to assist in fighting HIV, TB and malaria. But this was all to pay a so-called independent investigator to try and discipline an internal corruption whistleblower. Let our investigative journalist Azarrah Graeme fill in the blanks for you next.
Mavis Mafunda was a director of a company called Amen. And that company was formed just 8 days before Dr. Sandile Buthelezi signed off on that appointment.
I mean, 8 days, there's no track record.
Already major red flags there because, as you say, where is the track record? And in fact, on that note, the Hawks did find that while Mafunda claimed to have signed a declaration of interest, saying that she has no relationship with anybody working for the state, she actually did not sign that declaration of interest and in fact had a relationship with Mahlati himself.
Later in our trending topic, the so-called Facebook rapist Thabo Bester will stay put in a Supermax prison in KwaZulu-Natal. And finally, the apartheid SABC finally unbanned the Beatles on this day in South African history.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcast channels.
In Rauby's pointless Braai quiz, who's the billionaire businessman some lobbyists now out in the open want to see as ANC president in 2027?
This is The Lead, and this is the South African Story with your host, Graeme Robenheimer.
Moving to our top story today, and it's a follow-on from yesterday's trending topic. And when she's not crunching the Lotto's licensing saga, she's hot on the heels of the Mashatile sons, and now she has her eyes firmly squared on yet another alleged health ministry corruption scandal. It's the very excellent investigative journalist. It's Azarrah Graeme back on The Lead. Azarrah, hope you're doing well in 2026.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate your time. Look, this one's quite an interesting case because the Hawks have alerted us to it. Although there has been some sort of writing on the wall for the longest time, I sort of bring some context into the room first. We know that the Hawks arrested these 3 senior officials from within the health ministry just this week. These include the Director General, the DG, Sandile Buthelezi, a very senior position, Chief Financial Officer, Phineas Mamokhale, as well as the one of the Deputy Director Generals, Dr. Malikole Mahlati. This is all in connection with alleged fraud and theft, but we're getting a lot more details now about the actual money that was taken allegedly from the Global Fund. Tell us more. This case all sort of stems from 2023, but I know it actually starts with a certain advocate, Maile Ngake, a whistleblower. Take us back to that year.
Advocate Maile Ngake is the Chief Director of Labour Relations in the National Department of Health. And in 2023, he was placed on suspension following a report, although not directly as a result, but, you know, it's sort of supposition, following a report of over R1 billion irregular expenditure in the Northwest Department of Health. And that's where the story starts, because these 3 senior officials then decided to try and institute forensic investigation into him in order to formulate charges against him. And in hiring a company to do that, as well as a chairperson of Advocate Ngake's disciplinary hearing, they irregularly spent R1 million belonging to the Global Fund.
What is this Global Fund? I think oftentimes for the layperson, they hear of NGOs, non-profits, government agencies. This one is specifically like the Bill Gates Foundation, I think, has deposited money into this particular account for the use of what's generally concerned to be the general good.
Yes, so the story is important because while it is, as some would say, just R1 million, it's money that belongs to the Global Fund, and the Global Fund's role on the world stage and how South Africa can sort of come out looking is of utmost importance here. So the Global Fund is an international health financier that receives donations from governments from all around the world, as well as international organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then it donates that money to countries to assist in the fight against HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, and also to build up health systems. The Global Fund has pledged between 2025 and 2028, 6 billion rand to South Africa to support these efforts. But as we've seen in the arrests yesterday and my previous reporting regarding the misuse of Global Fund money with other health projects, there seems to constantly be problems with how this money is managed.
Right. Okay, so let's climb down into the well where the devil's details lie, Azarrah, so to speak. Buthelezi ultimately signs off to go ahead with this disciplinary process, as we already alluded to, into this whistleblower Ngake. And then Mahlati, as it's stated in the state's papers, ultimately led the charge to get an independent investigator as soon as possible. Who is this investigator, and what was the ambit of what they were meant to carry out so quickly?
Yes, so the DDG, Percy Mahlati, reasoned that the case against Advocate Ngake was of such a sensitive nature and urgent that they would need to deviate from normal procurement processes in order to appoint a company to investigate, do a fact-finding mission into Advocate Ngake. Now, News 24 in this morning's story have obtained exclusive internal documentation from the National Department of Health, which lays out just how this money was siphoned away from the Global Fund. And it starts with an appointment letter from the DG, Sandile Buthelezi, appointing a woman named Mavis Mafunda. Mavis Mafunda was a director of a company called Itani Amen. And that company was formed just 8 days before Dr.
Sure.
Sandile Buthelezi signed off on that appointment.
I mean, 8 days. There's no track record, Azarrah. There's there's nothing to base off of that performance of that particular company. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a special purpose vehicle company overnight just for one specific function. It's not supposed to be done.
Exactly. I mean, already major red flags there because, as you say, where is the track record? And in fact, on that note, the Hawks did find that while Mafunda signed a declaration of interest, claimed to have signed a declaration of interest, saying that she has no relationship with anybody working for the state, she actually did not sign that declaration of interest and, in fact, had a relationship with Mahlati himself.
But it's not as if this process also was not red flagged internally. And this is something that I've sort of picked up. Oftentimes there's another department or another specific audit committee within a particular department that will go, hey, this looks like irregular spending. You shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes that's the Auditor General. And so News 24 obtained, it's called a management report and a detailed audit report from the 2024 audit of the National Department of Health. So that's above and beyond what the Auditor General publishes publicly. It's actually a detailed report of the thinking behind every single finding that the Auditor General makes in a department. And this issue was flagged in 2024 for tax evasion and an uncondoned deviation from procurement processes, as well as contravening the Public Finance Management Act. And that's interesting because yesterday, the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, released a statement following those arrests, saying that he needs time to be briefed on the matter and then he'll release a statement. But my question is, what does he need to be briefed on if the Auditor General already raised this matter 2 years ago, but the matter is 3 years old?
I mean, Azarrah, from your lips to the minister's ears. Those AG findings essentially point to alleged tax evasion. How so? I think that's also very important for South Africans to just generally understand. Because although the work is being done, as the person claimed, as Ms. Mafunda claimed within her personal capacity, she was still trying to shoehorn it through her overnight company, right?
Yes, that's an important point. So when Sandile Buthelezi signed that appointment letter, he signed that letter to appoint Miss Mafunda, not Itani Amen. Yet Mafunda was invoicing the department through Itani Amen. You will see from those invoices that we published today that there are no tax deductions and there is no invoice number. So incredibly informal. But what this points to, the Auditor General said, is tax evasion, because there's obviously a difference between what you pay in tax personally and via a company. And that was one of the main red flags that actually the Auditor General noted.
Notwithstanding the fact that, the money's coming from the Global Fund, which shouldn't be used for this particular method or means, right?
Yeah, to discipline an official, absolutely.
Okay, what does this I found fascinating? And folks, if you would like to see a lot more of these exclusive documents that Azarrah's alluding to, of course, you can see our training article on the front page of News 24 today, Inside Health Department's Leadership Decapitation, how donor funds were looted, and you'll see a lot those documents a lot closely. But what does Mafunda, now this is the independent investigators, findings suggest about the culture within the health ministry in relation to Ngake? Because obviously she would come up with some sort of recommendation or insight, but it would be somewhat skewed in relation to the what appears to be the ousting of this whistleblower. So it's actually somewhat skewed, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. If you're asking me what her findings suggest about the culture, absolutely nothing, because the findings meant nothing. In fact, in my opinion, those findings were complete supposition. She asks things like, why be aggressive instead of answering questions, as a conclusion, which I thought was absolutely shocking. The entire report that she produces, it's an 11-page report that she took 3 months to produce, that she got paid 700,000 Rand of global money for, is just a bunch of emotional hogwash. And then to top it off, she then recommends another investigation into Ngake. I think if you're asking generally what that suggests about the culture at the National Department of Health, it suggests it's all about who you know and how you can and how easily you can siphon money out of the department if you want it.
Yeah. Folks, it's also important to also understand that a Director General's position is super critical with any department, because if a minister changes faces, right, that's very much the political position. And yes, you often see them in the news and, they're espousing all sorts of sound bites, and they do get to communicate and relay important decisions and actions taken within a respective department. But it's ultimately the Director General that these ministers come to rely on. And this is not the first time, Azarrah, that you've been tracking Mr. Buthelezi's dealings, right?
Yes, and just to add to your point, the Director General, he or she would account to their minister, but actually the ultimate accounting authority is the President. The President has the power to appoint and dismiss a DG. And so that's where our President comes in here, who has been up until now, silent on this matter of his own DG. And News 24 has sent him questions on what his plan of action with that will be.
Yeah, what else have you been looking at in regards to Buthelezi now for I think it's the last 2 years, right?
Yes, and so myself and my colleague here on the investigations team, Kyle Cowan, have actually been looking at Dr. Buthelezi for the past 2 years. And we started because there were allegations that he solicited a 500,000 Rand bribe from a contractor, base major, that was later irregularly, my investigation showed, awarded a 500 million Rand contract with the Independent Development Trust. That case has been investigated by the Hawks. And the docket for that matter is also sitting with the NPA, but it has been sitting with the NPA for the past 2 years with no movement. So it's interesting that we see an arrest on 1 million rand, whereas there's a bribery allegation that is still waiting at the desk of the NPA. I have also spent the past 2.5 years looking at the Independent Development Trust, as well as the Department of Health's project portfolio to refurbish hospitals valued at 1.6 billion rand that the IDT was handling. That all went completely south to the point where the Department of Health terminated the IDT's mandate and instituted its own investigation into that matter. And that was on top of the controversial 836 million rand PSA oxygen plants tender, which PwC found was irregular, which was also Global Fund money.
Yeah, I don't think I'm angry enough today, Azarrah, to want to talk about all the millions here. How is it then that the health ministry constantly finds itself in the news headlines for all sorts of negative reasons, when it wasn't digital vibe scandal, the PPE corruption rampant during the COVID-19 pandemic, and notwithstanding the Tembisa hospital extraction scandal, life is said many in its own right, although not outrightly so, the squandering of millions. It is still the loss of human life. I mean, surely the health ministry should be going up a huge shake-up under the government of national unity.
Absolutely. So in my investigation, I have found that the department often ends up with egg on its face, to put it very lightly, because it waits so long to take any action. So even though we have investigative journalists like Jeff Wicks exposing things at Tembisa Hospital, and even though we have people like myself and Carl Cowan exposing things related to the minister's own DG, they wait until the very last moment in order to act. And whether that's, because somebody is involved in the irregularities or somebody is trying to protect somebody else, that's how it ends up. In this particular case, again, Maramotswa lady knew, if only by me asking him questions about it, of all the shenanigans with his DG and how his DG has handled Global Fund money, and has still not taken any action against him, even after he's been arrested.
Let's end here, Azarrah. Mafunda, when we heard from the DPCI, the Hawks, there is this outstanding arrest for the director of the said company. Is this the allusion to, or Ms. Mafunda here? Is there an arrest imminent? What do we know here?
So originally, we got wind of all the arrests on Monday morning. And when I spoke to the Hawks actually on the phone, they told me 4 people had been arrested. And then in the statement, they said 3 people had been arrested. However, even if Mafunda was supposed to be arrested, she has not appeared in court. She has not pleaded to the charges. And so I think we will have to wait for anything to happen on that front.
Absolutely. But the 3 other accused here have already appeared in court, I think in the Pretoria Specialised Commercial Crimes Court. They're all out on bail of 10,000 Rand, and they're back in court. I think it's June. Is that right?
Yeah, June.
Azarrah, thank you so much. What an ingewikkeld story, but very important and critical to sort of tie in all together into one sort of central node of thinking. I really appreciate you coming on the lead today. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time, and there's going to be plenty more to talk about as this hot political year drags on.
Thank you so much, Graeme.
Trending topic.
In our trending topic for today, there are at least 2 documentaries out about his exploits. But as he attempts to write his next chapter, the so-called Facebook rapist Thabo Bester's latest bid to move to another prison has again failed. He's tried twice now to be shifted from KwaZulu-Natal's Supermax Ibongweni prison to Pretoria. Vusi Musi Kat Matlala, on another note, is also currently being kept there, much to his legal team's disliking. In Bester's case, though, it appears a lack of urgency has counted against him in his arguments for a change of prison before the courts. In fact, he's been conjuring up several cases about his detention conditions, prison classification, and access to certain documents, that they partially stand in the way of his upcoming trial set down in the Free State High Court sitting in Bloemfontein this July. But this main trial about Bester's brazen escape from Mangaung prison remains stalled by his co-accused, Nandipa Maguramana's application before the Constitutional Court, that's the apex court, challenging her deportation from Tanzania. Oh, such high court drama. Drop us a comment below.
And finally,
ending off with On This Day in South African history, that's the 3rd of March 1971, while the apartheid-era South African Broadcasting Corporation, or SABC for short, finally lifted its ban on the Beatles. The group's music had effectively been sidelined after John Lennon's controversial 1966 remark that they were, quote-unquote, more popular than Jesus, sparking backlash, of course, in conservative circles in apartheid-era South Africa. Now, by the early 1970s, changing cultural currents, the band's global dominance, made this ban by the SABC just too hard to justify. In the meantime, many South Africans were already tuning into LM Radio, broadcasting from Lorenzo Marques in Mozambique, which played contemporary pop and rock, including the Beatles, and became hugely influential in shaping local music tastes. When the SABC finally relented, though, it marked a small but symbolic shift in the country's tightly controlled cultural space. Time for Rauby's pointless Braai quiz. Who's the billionaire businessman some lobbyists, now out in the open, want to see as ANC president in 2027? Patrice Motsepe. The ANC's condemned the so-called PM27 campaign, but National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS spokesperson Ishmael Mnisi, he's since come out swinging in support of Motsepe, much to ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbulula's apparent distaste. It's shaping up to be a hot political year of note. If this was your answer all along, congratulations. You scored the absolutely priceless prize of being the most informed person around the Braai place. Congratulations. Remember, you can always drop us a comment below on any of the platforms you're listening to us from. I want to hear from you. How can we make the lead even better? My name's Graeme Rauby, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have the lead.